Hello and welcome to today's Partner Infopedia web conference. This is your U.S. Office 365 Partner Community Call for June 2015. With us today, please welcome Michael Pansaroli, who is a Partner Technology Strategist for Office 365 at Microsoft. And now, without any further delay, it is my pleasure to hand you over to your host. Michael, you now have the floor.
Thanks, Dawn Marie, and good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, and welcome to our June community call. And this month, we have our monthly themes, and this month we're going to be talking about Ignite highlights for our Office 365 partners. Our agenda today, we're just going to have a very brief community welcome, and I'm a Partner Technology Strategist. I'm also joined by Amanda Hill, and we're going to have a brief conversation about just kind of the all-up conference. So we'll have a short discussion. Then we're going to bring in Rami Nujame. He's going to talk about some upcoming learning opportunities for Partner Technical Services. And then we're going to get into some of those highlights. So we're going to talk about some developer updates and Office, Graph, and Delve, and some hybrid opportunities, a little bit about security and compliance. And then on the second half of our call, we're going to bring in Mark Cashman, who will be joining us. So I know everybody's excited to hear from Mark, and he'll be talking about the next-gen portals experience. And we'll be able to take some Q&A, hopefully, as time allows. I'm hoping that we get there. I even have some questions for Mark myself. So welcome, and if you are brand new to our community, here are some ways for you to be able to get connected. This is for partners, it's for Office 365, and it's geared toward those of you here in the U.S. So here are some ways to join that are focused on Office 365. You're going to get information on building your Office 365 cloud practices and other useful information about the service, training, and other resources. So we encourage you to use those vanity URLs there and sign up for the newsletter. Join our Yammer group. In fact, on the Office 365 Yammer group, join Office 365 Yammer. I actually started a thread on the Office 365 group if you want to be able to ask a question. The benefit to that is that if we don't get to it during the call, we'll be able to have that thread there and follow up. So feel free to either use the QA window or to ask your questions on Yammer if you have things you want to be able to follow up with. There's the community blog there, so aka.msus blog, and we have some posts not only on Azure but on Office 365. And I have the first post conference highlights. I'll have a few of those coming over the next month. And that newsletter usually comes out a little bit after the middle of the month is when it goes to publishing. So we hope you find some useful information there. And if you don't, well, I encourage you to sound off on Yammer and tell us what else you would like to hear. So this is about the Ignite conference, and I wanted to just bring in Amanda. And Amanda, so you were at the conference, and I'm just interested on your kind of big thoughts on the conference itself, and maybe the venue, right? A lot of times you'll hear complaints, I couldn't get into the session, and or maybe even any, I don't know, did you go to any parties? No, you probably didn't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just kind of the feel of it. You mind sharing just a minute about that?
Sure. Yeah, so for the Ignite conference specifically, we had 23,000 attendees. So if you were there, you probably felt that. But if not, just to kind of share the magnitude of it. And it was the first ever consolidated Microsoft technical conference. So, we took conferences of the past with SharePoint, Exchange, Lync, TechEd, MMS, and we consolidated all into one large conference. And so it was really well attended by both customers and partners, and we covered all the products and services for Microsoft Technologies. There was over 1,100 sessions in really good, rich technical content, and it was all recorded. So if you happen to miss a session or if there was two overlapping sessions that looked really interesting, you could go back at any time and take a look at that recording.
Yeah, I've got those links at the end of the deck, which everybody can download.
Great. And then something else that I would mention, too, is I thought it was the best expo that I've seen at a Microsoft technical conference like that. And, it was the conference itself had the expo at the center. It was sort of the hub of the conference. It acted like a gathering place between sessions, or if you're heading to lunch or just trying to get from one part of the conference to the other. And it was also where we had all the session overflows. So it acted like a gathering place, which was really neat for the expo. There were customer booths, there were partner booths, and then there was also big major Microsoft solution themes inside that were really well labeled inside the expo. There were short little 20-minute theater sessions where you would gather for really specific deep.
And did people attend those, do you feel like, or was it too difficult to maybe go back and forth between the sessions and get to those little brief?
No, it was so well laid out because you would go to a session, and then in order even to get to another session, you would pass to the expo. And then you would see these little mini theater deep dives going on. And so it was really easy to get around and to attend those sessions inside the expo as well. And then also what I noticed too, Michael, when I was in the expo, there were many people from the Microsoft product groups there and engineering, and they were really well labeled with bright orange shirts. So you could have deep technical discussions too, and you could easily find those folks. So I thought it was really well laid out.
Nice. And so I know you and I had some of our favorite sessions. We both agreed. And but I know that you spent a lot of time checking out the Skype for Business stuff. Can you just maybe take a minute on some of those kind of takeaways and highlights for the Skype for Business launch? There's a lot of buzz around that.
Sure. Yeah, because there was a lot of really good favorite sessions that I know you're going to touch on. So for Skype for Business, there was one session that I thought, and it was on Tuesday at 9 o'clock, and it was called Skype for Business Online Voice and Audio Conferencing. I thought it was a really good overview of what's coming with Office 365 Voice and Audio Conferencing, what's coming this fall, where customers can subscribe to cloud audio conferencing services with a Microsoft-hosted conference bridge, and we'll actually provide native cloud to PSTN conferencing. And so when that comes out, each tenant's going to get its own phone number. It'll be integrated with the scheduling that you do with meetings in Outlook and OWA, with Meet Now, and then with also the web scheduler. And now we won't have call moderators with that service, so if that's something that's needed, then you would still look for a traditional audio conferencing provider like Verizon or Intercall or AT&T, one of those. But I thought that was a really interesting announcement. And then later this year, too, in Skype for Business Online, we will have basic telephony voice functionality with PSTN access, phone numbers, number portability, new DIDs with cloud control, call control in the cloud. And so there was discussion of that in the session. So you'll be able to do things like put a call on hold, retrieve a call, transfer, forward, do simultaneous ring, have call delegation, get voicemail, call history, that basic telephony functionality that you would get in a PBX. And then you'll also be able to use qualified IP desk phones or mobile phones as well with that service. Now, if you're wondering, too, about 911, it's going to have basic 911 that's similar to functionality that we had in Link 2010. You would enter an address for an end user, and then we would provide that 911 based off that info. So if E911 is absolutely necessary, that's something that's coming later in 2016. Just kind of give you a little bit of info there. One advantage that I really saw for customers there is they're going to get a single bill for Office 365 and telecommunications all in one if they choose to go with this route. And then there are several hybrid options that are going to be available. So you could, if you wanted to keep your current PSTN because maybe you're in a locked-in contract, right, but still have Microsoft Voice Cloud controls, we can do that. Or you could integrate with another audio conferencing provider. Or you could connect with on-prem Skype for Business. Or you could run it all in the cloud, right, with telephony functionality. So I thought that session was really well done. If anybody wants to go a little bit further with that, to check that one out.
Great. Well, that's a terrific update. So a lot of exciting news happening with Skype for Business. And that's a nice lead-in. What I want to do is introduce Rami Nujame. And so he's with MPN Partner Technical Services, and he's the Partner Services Offering Lead. And Rami, why don't you tell us about some upcoming training that you have for partners if they're interested in learning more?
Certainly. Thank you, Michael, and thank you for inviting me on the call. I do have some exciting news to share with Skype for Business, as we were talking about. We have upcoming in July to help you get started on Skype for Business, help you understand all the great features and capabilities for Skype for Business. We're running a series in July, and it's a 6-part series of an hour and a half each. And these are all live webcasts that we're providing, and you can register for these sessions via the Partner Learning Center. This is the best of the Skype for Business Technical Readiness Series that was just recently recently launched and made available. And we've taken them and put them into an hour-and-a-half type webcast throughout the month of July, starting July 6th and ending on July 29th. So I encourage you, if you're interested in learning more about Skype for Business from a technical enablement perspective, I highly recommend these. We ran some of these sessions last month, and we've had great participation from the partner community. Again, these are at no charge, and these are running, and you can register for these via either the hot sheet, which I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with. They're all published in the hot sheet. And if you have any questions around any of these sessions, you can always contact NAPA at Microsoft.com. That's NAPA, so North America Partner Assistance. And there's a team that will help you if you have any questions, whether it's with registrations or if you want more information around these webcasts. Again, they range from what's new in Skype for Business, and they'll even talk about all the way around the Edge server for Skype for Business, and you can see the details and description of each session. And they're well laid out, so from a, we know we're all busy. The way they're scheduled, they're an hour and a half each, scheduled twice a week, so that you can still go on and focus on your customers, and that's it. So again, my name is Rami Nujame, and if you have any questions around these sessions, please feel free to contact me, or best of is to reach out to NAPA at Microsoft.com, and they can share with you all the information and answer any questions that you might have. That's it. Back to you, Michael.
Appreciate that, Rami. Thanks for the update on that. Looks like some good sessions. And again, if you want to get that list, these slides are available for download. Okay, so first I want to start things off with some development highlights that we're going to talk about add-ins and web apps and the Office 365 APIs and the unified APIs. And this is from the Office Y, or the Office Development Matters Here's Why session from Rob Lefferts and Jeremy Fake, where they showcased these Office add-ins. And so if you've been developing apps for Office 365 for a while, you may remember them as Agave apps or apps for Office, or even longer, you remember them as add-ins. Well, now we're back to calling them add-ins again. So today, the Office 365 APIs are in production, and you can use those to build add-ins in Win32 already. The good news is that, this is the same model going forward. So we currently have add-ins on Word and Excel Online. We also have Outlook for Mac add-ins. What's new is that there are new capabilities that work across the online apps and devices. So developers, you've been asking for, the ability to extend that main window inside of Outlook. And so we're calling these task panes, basically HTML running within an iframe. It's using JavaScript and Office.js library to pull through and get context out of the selected mail or meeting information. And you can even access attachments to enable, just a bunch of integration scenarios. And so now you can see there the ribbon buttons. They can be added directly in the Office app. Those are called add-in commands. And having new enhanced capabilities right in the context of the Office app, gives users a single experience without having to continuously alt-tab or having to save a bunch of bookmarks. Here's another example of a demo that they showed for SAP, where they were expanded, the app add-in capabilities by delivering them on the iPad. So with Excel for iPad support, you can reach over 100 million additional Office users. So Word and PowerPoint for iPad were announced that they were coming soon. So pretty cool session. So any of you out there, I know some ISVs are on the call, or if you're a systems integrator and have some IP, maybe you already have an existing SaaS solution. Hello? Everybody hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great.
Yes.
You can make that an Office 365 web app. So you can think about your solution as being in the middle and Office becoming an endpoint. So with Office 365 web app, you can get single sign-on from Office 365 called directly into our APIs, and you can get your app into the Office store. and integrate it right into the app launcher. So you've got add-ins directly inside of the ecosystem, so you can build an add-in that's not just available inside of Office or SharePoint, but can be visible inside of that app launcher. So just like add-ins, once you integrate your web app, you already saw greater prominence in the ribbon, but now you can see your app surface in the Office store and have that pinned to the app launcher. So I left the MSDN article link down in there if you want to read how you can do more of that or how to actually get that app registered. It's really going to help discoverability of your app across all the different markets. Okay, so we currently have these Office 365 today. Some were actually announced at Build, including the Groups API, and others received some updates. And this is an area with these REST APIs where we're really investing heavily. And at Build and Ignite, we announced a preview of a single unified API REST endpoint to access multiple Office 365 API services. So what the unified API does, it reduces the complexity of many productivity scenarios in code. So one of the examples that they ran through is, like let's say you wanted to programmatically retrieve users' files, their profile picture, and you wanted to find the manager, the person who last edited that filing organization. Well, it turns out you have to actually go to Azure Active Directory, you got to go to SharePoint, you got to go to Exchange, get the profile picture to piece it all together. It involves having to discover and navigate different endpoints to each service. Got to acquire and manage separate access tokens and deal with siloed services and even a varying data model. So now you can perform those operations through the existing and newly introduced in preview, right, through this single REST endpoint, and turn that formerly difficult complex query into basically simple navigation. So the API exposed information around productivity entities and their relationships among them, and so you can navigate through that REST URL namespace there, graph.microsoft.com. So as you can see from the graphic, you can access users and files and mail and calendar and groups, and also the Office graph to see organizational contacts and social activity. And I love this graphic because it really helps clarify the Office graph, and I heard confusion from some of my partners trying to understand the difference. Was the unified API the Office graph? And you can see here that the Office graph is actually part or included of in the Office Unified API. So we'll have more about the Office graph in a little bit. And the new endpoint's currently in preview, but you can learn more about it, of course, at dev.office.com and then WAC Unified APIs. I wanted to highlight this in one of the developer sessions. A few of them actually highlighted the new Office 365 Groups API, where as developers you can now build applications that leverage the native team collaborations of the Office 365 Groups. And I wanted to call out this sample called the Property Inspector. So it's out on GitHub, and it was featured at the conference, and I have the link up there for you if you want to go check it out. And the sample's been out there for a bit, but it's been updated to use those unified APIs and the Groups API. It converts it'll take every inspected property as part of this app, and they turn that into a group. So leveraging conversations and files and calendars, members, and even OneNote. It leverages the Azure Media Services, take advantage of that Videos API, and then it uses the OneNote API to annotate on top of photos and create OneNotes on the fly. So I thought it was pretty slick. And the example is built out as reference sample, so you know how to use this. So it's on Xamarin and all the different devices, native iOS, native Android, Cordova, so that you can actually see how they are using these different APIs. I know that some of you on the call today are new to Microsoft, or new to Office 365, so for those partners out there are looking for ideas, examples of how to make money in the cloud, I pulled this slide out from Jim Epps' session on everything you need to know about the Office store, and I included that in my list. I thought that was a really good session, especially for ISVs or SIs out there looking to build some apps. You can join the Office developer community by taking advantage of this Office 365 developer program that was announced at Build and then again at Ignite. So you get a free subscription for Office 365 development instance with access to the browser-based tenantless Napa development environment, so you can start building out those add-ins. It was basically an update for Napa. You also get a monthly newsletter, which is becoming really important because you're actually hear from engineers about their schedules, about what they're releasing and what's new, and so all that communication happens, training and so on. So there's also additional perks. There's a subscription, and Kendo UI Professional with the HTML control, and there's training as well. So there's a number of goodies that are in there, and so I encourage you to sign up for that program. So here are the developer and ISV sessions that I just went through that you can check out that I would recommend. We really didn't talk too much about the SharePoint add-ins, but if you're a SharePoint developer and you want to go see Vesta sessions, I highlighted those as well. If you haven't seen those yet, you can go check out the recordings and some great insight from the Patterns and Practices initiative, and turning your full trust code, being able to kind of fit that in with the app model and other information on branding, and also a OneDrive session, which is really good as well. So there's a lot happening there with the conversions of consumer and business. Okay, as we kind of move on to the Office Graph, I think it's first important to kind of understand the distinction between Delve and the Office Graph. So Delve is technically characterized as a next-gen portal or an experience built on top of the Office Graph. So you can think of the Delve as like a reasoning layer that adds semantics and insights. And today you can experiment and query the Office Graph using the Graph Explorer and the Office Graph API. And what was showcased at Ignite is this ability to query the trending around and working with relationships. So trending around uses the file and the drive entities, and working with uses the person entities. So you can see there examples of relationships and entities. So once you kind of have that distinction, you kind of go forward and take a look at some of the exciting opportunities that we saw or heard about at the Ignite conference. So I think this is really an exciting opportunity for partners. And the future in the Office Graph API is going to let you traverse these edges from nodes in the graph and use the results in your apps and incorporate third-party services or line of business data into the graph. So that means the potential is there to extend these capabilities in Office 365 or even build entirely new features and capabilities. So some of these examples, or potential, right, you could submit your own schema or custom data. So like line of business data to be analyzed by the Office Graph. And eventually the intention is that the Office Graph will be able to store custom data types to support these extensibility scenarios. So in the session, which is where this slide is from, and building solutions with the Office Graph is really a deep dive on the types of customizations that they are looking to build into the graph, and I highly encourage you to check that out if this is an interest to you in that area. You'll also be able to customize those Delve cards and change the actions that you'd like to do with them. So imagine the actions you might like to take on a sales opportunity, for example. We got a sneak peek at integrating third-party services such as Salesforce, so you can check out those sessions to see that in action. But as you think about ideas that you have for your own customizations or other experiences that you would like to build, so they also talked about being able to change like what data is shown on different boards. So lots of opportunities here. Add third-party line of business with type extensibility, leverage connectors. You can build custom analytics, or just build out your own experience. So when you consider the hybrid connectivity for SharePoint, meaning that your on-premise line of business data can participate in the graph index in a hybrid scenario, I can see a lot of partner opportunity in the planning, extending solutions to really harness the power of the graph. So yeah, if you missed that announcement by Bill Baer in his session, he mentioned that you're going to be able to have a combination of both cloud and on-prem, and that update also going to be an update to SharePoint 2013 in addition to the new version that's going to be coming out. So you're going to be able to leverage Delve and the Office Graph capabilities in the cloud. Just real quick, I wanted to show this one. This one got a lot of attention. I know that Mark will probably be sharing the insights, the people insights, but this organizational insights got a lot of buzz on Twitter. So if you look at this, it's really kind of interesting. You can actually see how you're spending your time and how you're working between other groups and how much email you're sending outside of work hours to check out your work-life balance. And they showed some insights into how you're going to connect with other teams. So that's kind of a real interesting future scenario on what you're going to be able to see in those Delve experiences. So here's some of the sessions that I talked about and ways to get started. Again, frankly, I was hoping for a little bit more of an announcement in the preview API, but it did show us some great experience in what's going to be coming. But today, if you want to get started, you can still check out the preview, and I'll show you how to query with the Graph Explorer and do some experiments there. So next, I wanted to touch on some highlights from the Bill Baer session, the evolution of SharePoint, and also what's new for IT pros in 2016, and it's really impossible to cover everything, so I really encourage you to check out that for all the details on the management enhancements and new boundaries and limits and exciting stuff like zero downtime patches, so please check out that. But what I wanted to do is pull out some opportunities that I think are going to be important for partners, and they really center around this idea of a cloud-accelerated experience, or really new hybrid scenarios that are going to be possible with the next version of SharePoint, which was announced. The public beta is going to be Q4 2015, and it's going to GA Q2 2016. And by the way, for many of you that were interested, if you didn't catch it, Bill made clear that there's going to be additional versions of on-premise and I'm almost certain he said for the foreseeable future. So I know that was encouraging for a lot of folks. And one of the hybrid scenarios is this cloud search service application. I put the deep dive session down there on the bottom, so if you want to drill into the next level. But basically, in that IT Pros session, Bill introduced this, and where he talked about moving forward from a model of query federation to a unified index and result set. So there's no index on premises. So even document libraries on-prem can be scoped and searched from the cloud search service with deep refiners across the entire result set. So the cloud search service application can execute queries. So what you'll be able to do is basically move some of the, an expensive workload to the cloud, or at least partially, and cut down on the number of services. You're going to be able to save your clients money. So the query uses the SharePoint online query component, and crawling and parsing stays on-prem, and the metadata gets passed up into the cloud. So your content isn't actually in the cloud, it's just the index. And so that's why for search previews, you're going to need to reverse proxy back to your WAC service, part of that inbound hybrid query model, which some of you might already be familiar with if you're working in this area for a subset of those documents. So you can still kind of leverage or combine query federation if some of that needs to stay on-prem. So a lot of different possibilities and opportunities. So you can also include, and just kind of getting back to the Delve piece, you can, there was actually a really good demo of being able to combine like Delve cards from both on-prem and in the cloud, and that was demonstrated in Bill's session. I thought that was really neat, got a lot of applause. And also, if you're working with SharePoint 23, they announced that an update would be coming to SharePoint 23 to enable this capability as well. So that was also got a lot of good attention. So for more information, check out that deep dive session, which you can see in the cloud. And then the compliance, or the Unified Compliance Center and the Cloud Connect, another great hybrid scenario. And so the idea behind the Compliance Center is that we now have one consistent policy across all services. It's a single experience, a single way of expressing security, rather than have to go to each individual service and configure that. So say I don't want content to be shared outside my organization, or if I want to watch things with a particular keyword, I want that to be true whether I'm in Word, OneDrive, Exchange, Yammer, or Skype for Business. I've got one spot. I don't have to go and configure these different services. And part of that, as you can see in the slide, is eDiscovery. So think about it. With that unified index now, eDiscovery can also be unified and search across all content. This is a big deal because you previously needed to maintain two eDiscovery centers, one in the cloud, another one on-prem, and so you had the full scope of you had to have all that extra infrastructure on-prem as well, and so some interesting possibilities there. And then auditing, there's going to be some next-generation compliance experiences coming that they also demonstrate. Not available today, but this idea of tell me everything about the user in Office 365. You've got all the wealth of this information, and if there are trends or suspicious activity about that user that I should know about, I should be getting insights and alert to that. This is all thanks to that Management Activity API, which was announced at Build and Ignite, where partners can use logs and security compliance signals within solutions to provide monitoring and analysis and visualization. So surely lots of opportunities for partners as you consider these compelling hybrid use cases. I think it's going to provide a lot more incentives for your customers to consider these cloud options if they've been holding out or just been staying on-prem. As a partner, you're going to be able to provide consulting services around these new experiences. I'm thinking about cloud migration assessment plans and search planning and implementation. Search customizations where there's a mix of on-prem and in-cloud in those cases, eDiscovery, planning, policy design, custom policy implementation. And then with Skype for Business and Voice in the Cloud coming in the fall and ExpressRoute for Office 365, I think it's going to be, in those new scenarios with broadcast meetings, there's going to be, I think it's going to be really important for partners to understand those hybrid scenarios, get very familiar with them, and I think a lot of opportunity is going to come from that. So I touched on Compliance Center, and I want to call out a great session by Kamal Jarnan and Ben Appleby, Meet the Office 365 Compliance Center. And I really like that session because it covers so much and it brings a lot of content on security and compliance together, including archiving, including the new drive shipping options, eDiscovery, DLP, including those new sensitive information types in SharePoint, and showing up policy tips and document libraries, device protection and audit. So much is in there, and that new Management Activity API that I just mentioned, making those next generation compliance experiences possible. So if you want to go deeper on that Management Activity API, the one I highlighted there is a great session. Amanda and I are both working with partners that build on top of that API in preview, and I thought it was a great session to see how partner examples of how they're taking advantage of that. Office 365 Security Control, that's Vijay Kumar and Sarah Manning Dawson session. That's a great overview if you need to deliver the security in the cloud story with your customers. I know I always refer to that if I have to make the cloud pitch. And then auditing in 365, that's Kitaki's session if you want to go deeper on that. All right, so now I wanted to bring in my friend Mark Cashman. Mark Cashman doesn't need any introduction, but he's a senior product marketing manager for SharePoint, and I'm so glad that he was able to join the call for us today. And Mark had a couple of sessions. He's going to talk to us about Next-Gen Portals, which was obviously a huge theme at the conference. Mark, are you there?
I am here, and hopefully you're able to hear me.
Yes, we can hear you just great. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, great job. Obviously a ton to cover, and certainly going to go into sort of a double click on Next-Gen Portals in Office 365. I have a way that you can follow along if you want to. It's not a PowerPoint, it's actually a sway that I'll be presenting from, and it's something that, is a little bit of a leave behind if you want to read further, or certainly link to the session, similar to the way that Michael had links to other sessions. You'll see I've embedded those within the sway. But I'm going to turn just a second just to share out my screen so you can follow along, or you can follow along through your own browser, and make sure that I am able to be seen here. Okay, Michael, if you could just give me one reassurance that you're able to see my screen here.
It's loading now, and it just came through. Great.
So Next-Gen Portals in Office 365 is a really big motion for the Office 365 team, and certainly a lot of teams coming together. That's the SharePoint team, the team in Oslo that's working on Delve and the Office Graph, the Yammer team, and a lot of other areas where these are ready-to-go experiences that are integrating the suite if the experience is in Office 365. But beyond Office 365, in this new sort of portfolio building of portals, we're also doing a lot of work to help partners and our customers be able to extend our ready-to-go portals or to be able to build custom portals either the way that you can today or some of what we talked about at Ignite being new ways to build custom portals in the future. So the breadth of the portfolio really is what we have today. You can build a portal in SharePoint Online. It's about a third of what people do in SharePoint Online. Certainly on-premises has been very strong in this portal space. And as we start to roll out the ready-to-go portals, it's just additive to that portfolio. Way that we're doing this certainly is to do it in a way that, again, is connected to the rest of the Office 365 suite, or on-premises, obviously, to be able to tap into those services or maybe even federate them from a hybrid perspective. And that's a little bit further down the road. But if you were to look at it at a broad perspective, the family of offerings, some of which are starting to roll out in market today, some of which are rolling out in parts and pieces, and I'll talk about what I mean there, and then certainly some things to come. So not everything is in production, or what I talk about today is certainly roadmap as well. So if you look about the family that we have growing here, we're focused on making video in the enterprise a tier 1 experience with Office 365 video. We're really introducing what has been built in the past as a people portal or a place to go find people expertise. We're really building that into Delve with the new people experiences. We also talked about a new knowledge management offering we called Codename Infopedia. And that's something that we're looking to build on really what people have been building on SharePoint for the long term around knowledge management, but having that be a more dynamic experience, a more integrated with Office 365 and a lot of content types across mail, across messaging, and of course across a lot of documents and information. And then of course the focus still on portals in terms of customization. When we look at all of these, we want these to be intelligent because they're connected to the Office Graph. We want them to be social because it's easy to share items out to Yammer and have that be more of an inline or an embedded experience. We want them to be mobile in the sense that they are either apps that we deliver or core web experiences that are meant to be smaller devices, tablets, up to even very large screens, and to scale dynamically, as you interact with them. But certainly whether that's with a finger or with a keyboard and mouse, to optimize for what device you have, and even especially as you move from a connectivity perspective, if you move and change your bandwidth or your device as you're going. And then the fact that they're ready to go, you'll hear us say that, but what we really mean is not just out of the box, but something that is really truly enterprise ready. And when we say that, we don't mean just for the enterprise, but something that has the expectation of the right feature set, that meets the right security requirements, that also then is something that your end users are going to love. And as partners, certainly looking towards selling that as a motion that really is what we mean. We want it to be a friendly environment to be able to engage with content that's easy to access no matter what device you're on, no matter where you're at connecting from. But at the bottom here, you'll see that really we do mean we're tapping into all the goodness that's in Office 365. From across the suite. Some of it's very content-centric. Some of it's very people and content-centric in terms of the value that Michael talked about around the Office Graph. But if you really look across the suite, we really want to consume and bring in all of the right experiences or content types into the portal experience so that it's a little bit more of a one-stop shop and a very connected experience as you navigate through. So we had a big session that we talked about this in length, certainly similar to like what we're doing today, where we really walk through each element, which I'm going to do right now. But if you get that premise of how we're looking to grow the portfolio, both in ready-to-go and custom, with some of these key pillars in mind in terms of how we're designing them and how we'd like you to then benefit from it, let's get into a little bit more detail on each one. So Office 365 Video is in market today, and pleased to say that we're at worldwide rollout. And next coming up is we're going to be rolling this out to our government customers shortly. But we're really looking to now get to that next wave of what features are we going to deliver next. But before I jump on sort of the what's coming next, if you get a sense of what Office 365 Video is, it is a feature within Office 365 that gives you an enterprise video streaming destination where people can upload, view, set channels, organize their content, and ultimately optimize to be within Office 365 so that once there's video in this environment, it can also be shared and exposed through something like Delve. So there's now specific video types that show up in Delve. If you were to create a blog, you could write a blog and add a video much more easily than you could in the past. And as we go forward, a much more integrated experience already with Yammer, and when you go to share something, you can share through email very easily. But it's also meant to be mobile, so we delivered our first mobile app, which is for the iPhone, and that's the graphic you see here on the left. And it really does everything you could do on the portal: view content, navigate the different channels, and even upload video, but really in a way that's optimized for that device, which we know has specific requirements both for design, look and feel, and for playback. So the solution optimizes for the device you're on and the connectivity that you have, and really, again, echoing what we're doing with all portals. We want them to be device friendly. We want them to be interactive in the way that you would expect with that certain type of content. With video, pretty much you're either sent a link or you're navigating through the portal, click, watch, and if you're contributing content, that you want to do that very easily with a low friction in terms of how you get it there, or of course for a lot more of the set of people will be more from a consumption perspective. But this is just a look at how the video tile is really a tier 1 experience destination in Office 365. And from an admin perspective, you can turn it on. It's on by default. You could also turn it off if your customer or your company is not ready for it. But once it's turned on, it's very easy to contribute content, to build out and manage the top layer here, which is more of a curated experience. And then everything below the fold, either on the home page or on a channel page, is really driven by people interaction. And that may be what's popular, which is driven by the Office graph, or it may be more of that curated experience. As you get to the channel level, you might have different channel owners. So we really want to provide that full spectrum of end user experience, admin experience, and what's coming, what we talked about at Ignite, specific to video, and Michael touched on it, was a new set of APIs for how you can interact with videos to either pull them out of the portal or to publish them into the portal. And that's something we're really excited. It's in preview now, and we've got a lot of our ISVs starting to bang on the APIs, telling us what they like and don't like, and some significant players really looking to see how they can sort of have that publish to Office 365 video experience from their app. Some of those are Microsoft partners, some of those are third parties as well that are interested in really taking advantage of those. So there's a few links here to a couple blogs that I've put out specifically to go more depth. And I encourage you to go, and if you don't have a trial or a tenant, to spin one up, give it a roll. There's a lot of materials to help you navigate sort of the admin experience and the expected end user experience before you really commit to it. But like anything else, I think hands-on is the best approach. And if you're in this way, or when you do navigate through here, you'll see a link to a couple videos that really are aimed to answer some of the common questions that we get, but also to demonstrate what it is and how you can use it. So next up is the people experiences that we've built into Delve. And this is going to take a kind of an interesting tact. It's not necessarily its own singular destination. Like when you go to the video portal, it's connected in a lot of different ways to Office 365. And when you go into the people experiences side of Delve, it really is in the mix of the Delve experience. And so if I showed you the graphic here, which is really a profile, which is where a lot of these people experiences live, one thing you can note here is this activities feed is the common Delve feed. It's everything that Michael talked about. And as now I can tab between activities and about, this is as if I had found somebody else in my company, either through a people search or I had come across a piece of content that had them from their presence awareness. I could click in and either chat with them or find out more about them. And this is really a future look at what's coming. Some of what's already landed in first release is some of the look and feel, the change in design. This is also mobile friendly. So if I was looking at this on a mobile device or a tablet, it would resize and become much more friendly. Similar if you've done this with Delve. These are effectively different cards with different types of information. Some of the things that we're working on in the future are this element of working on. Once the graph really starts to know who you work with, what content you're interested in or interacting with, it'll also start to derive some of your expertise either based on past experience, which we know either coming from your own HR system or potentially from third-party services. But once we start to know a little bit more about you, the machine learning behind it will start to promote some of the things you're working on, which as an end user, you'll be able to either validate or not. But obviously once validated, it's something where we're not asking you to fill out a form and take that time, which in the past we've learned people don't typically do, or if they do, it's a big motion for admins to push. But here, working on can be highly important because not only does this say that Bonnie's working on energy-saving offices, but I can actually click into it and find more innovation or more content material, whether it's videos or documents or links to sites, based on this because it's also a little bit like a board, which I'll touch on in just a second. But beyond things like organizational view, some of the skills, and links to other areas that I could go find out more about Bonnie, is this concept that we're working on called praise. And this is the way that people can internally recognize others, and we see this as a big part of what people build into their people portals currently and what we've seen in the past, because it promotes that reward and sort of the send of kudos to really highlight people that are doing a great job. And it's also very lightweight, so it's easy to do, and it's really going to be a feature of this profile and people experiences. But at the core of people experiences is just finding other people. And what we found in Dell is people come to look for content or they come to look for people. And typically when somebody finds a person, they're wanting to be informed about their content. And vice versa, if they're going and they discover content, they actually want to connect with the person or people behind that. And that could lead to a group, and there's a lot of work around a group profile that we showed at the conference. And of course there's a lot of work around the people profile. The other area that we talked about and are just now delivering into first release is this new authoring canvas that we have, which initially in the people experiences, and I'll go back just for a second, if I click on blog, or now what we have also a link that just says start writing, it'll actually take you to a new page authoring experience we call the authoring canvas that allows you to create new content. And right now it's very targeted at blogs within this experience. But if you think about coming from a different portal to bring up the authoring canvas, you might be creating an FAQ, you might be creating a trip report, or you might be creating something that's going to be managed into the system for long term and really labeled and listed as the authoritative content, and maybe with special permissions, if customer ready, partner ready, or internal only, those types of things. Which really leads me to where I'm headed next, which is the codename Infopedia, which is what we announced that we're working on, certainly not yet in market, but something that we're very excited about. But for people experiences, if you want to learn more, we did have a blog and certainly sessions that we ran at Ignite that went a little bit deeper into what we're doing around people. A lot of what I covered, but they showed also a lot more around what we're thinking in the future. And these two folks are the two guys behind it, both on the Oslo team and the Portals team. So they did a nice job with some broad coverage. So to give you a little look around one of the bigger portals that we're working on, and really the next level of investment where we're creating a new experience in Office 365, is what we codename Infopedia. And this is a knowledge management portal. When you look at it, some of the elements look a little bit like Dell from a card perspective, but really this is where we start to think about authoritative content. When you upload, you're going to set some parameters around how it's to be used, what's the particular life cycle around this element, and it's not just documents. These could be pages that were created with the authoring canvas. They could be documents like a white paper. They could be sales material. They could be marketing materials, finalized videos that are meant to be distributed and leveraged in sales calls or for events. But at the top, you really have this element to be able to, again, curate content, something that from a top-down motion you would be promoting new material and new motions. As an example, internally today in Microsoft, we've got a big motion coming with Windows 10. And if I were to go to our internal knowledge management portal, I would see a ton of materials about how to best demo Windows 10, how to get Windows 10, from a trial perspective, so that we can hand out those temporary keys, selling, the best, the top 10, advancements in Windows 10. So here I would come, similar to any project, and find all those materials in a consolidated fashion, but again, labeled and listed in the way that they can be used, and without me having to ask, can I use this, or how can I use this? By default, we'll answer some of those. But in the bottom, what is different in the way that we're approaching it is to be able to leverage, instead of a Delve experience, which is a very personal experience, to be able to program this, or to provide access to be able to program how much of the knowledge management portal, Infopedia, will be programmed by the Office Graph to show me content that, again, is listed as an item specifically for Infopedia, but it doesn't necessarily need to be uploaded and put into Infopedia. So we think of content coming from all over Office 365 and at some point being deemed ready to be exposed. There may be a motion to put it into the portal, or there may be a motion just to label it as appropriate to be exposed in the portal. And with the Office Graph, a lot of that will become a lot easier in terms of adding content, putting it into certain buckets, and there's a lot of work we're doing around this sort of next generation of boards, which is a Delve feature currently. But if you think about boards and how they mature, boards today are very public, and anybody can apply a keyword to have a piece of content show up in that collection of items, which is the board. And if we start to harden that in some scenarios like this, where you use a key term and then, say only these items can be added, even if other people are using the term in other boards or other areas, this particular view is the one that I've deemed final, and this is the one that I want for people to really take away. But there'll be a lot of pivots and a lot of different ways to create subcomponents of that portal. But we're really leveraging boards, like I mentioned. The authoring canvas will be there to create new content for the portal, and from a pages perspective. And we also introduced this concept of microsites, which is, again, sort of a sub-collection of multiple pages, multiple pieces of content, with that added context of why is this information collected in this way, how should I use it, who should I contact, is there a broader Yammer group I can connect it with, and you could link to that. So there's a lot that you'll be able to do with microsites that is just that next level down from the main portal itself. So we've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot more to expose over time to share more once we're at that next level of disclosure. But we were really excited to introduce this one, and it got a lot of great feedback. And I think the team behind it is doing a really nice job, really working on this next portal. So there was a whole session if you want to go a lot deeper into the knowledge management portal. And then certainly from a backbone perspective, if you want to go a little bit further into boards, I linked to the blog as well to talk about it's boards in Delve, but you can infer a little bit once you start to understand how we're going to leverage them in the knowledge management portal. So in the last couple minutes here, I just wanted to touch on the concept of custom portals, what we have today and how we're adding to that going forward. So if you look at today, obviously we have what we've called the publishing infrastructure in SharePoint Online, or if you were to build a custom intranet, think about creating custom master pages, custom CSS, connected to information in SharePoint, with a lot of room to create dynamic designs. You could even do a lot of that mobile work to make responsive pages, custom navigation, custom metadata, lots of area to customize, and we've seen people do significant work and really interesting design and deliverables to their end users. And this is both on-premises and online. There's some unique things that we've been learning about in online when people start to build custom portals in SharePoint Online. And we really have been tuning and tweaking our infrastructure so that people can build more performant portals. And some of it is just guidance in terms of if you have too many web parts that make too many calls to the search index, you have to either call in a different way or maybe limit the number of those elements on the page. So we've put a lot more information, best practices. We've really focused on how can we own making these faster. And then certainly a lot of troubleshooting. And one link that I have when you look back on the Sway is an area where we've invested a lot across the suite of Office 365 to really help you tune both your pages and your network to optimize that speed or that accessibility of Office 365. So if that's today, the today is not going away. You can move a custom portal from on-premises to SharePoint Online. You can connect them in a hybrid fashion. You can build new in both on-prem and online. What we're working on for tomorrow is really more of a hyper-focus on getting out of the way of the front end. So we know a lot of these experiences are being built for various browsers and various devices, and we want to get out of the way of not having that have to be a SharePoint-driven or SharePoint expertise behind building those front-end experiences. certainly those will exist and will continue and we will support them. But as you start to see us do more open standards, open industry standards like HTML5, JavaScript, and a lot of other developer code bases and certainly the different channels, if we start to be able to enable more in the front end and really start to own those REST endpoints, which is all of those new APIs that Michael was talking about, we're doing that same amount of effort for portals so that if you build into our ready-to-go portals, that information is not stuck. And if you're building your own portal to tap into information across Office 365 that also happens to be in SharePoint Online or other services, those APIs will be much more open and accessible. And of course, refining and continuing that great content management backend. A lot of this work will be done working with the Azure team to give us that, what does it mean to build a custom portal from scratch in Office 365? And there's a lot of thinking and a lot of planning in how we can best take advantage of that container to optimize both the connected experience in Office 365, but also to save time in the build process so that maybe building for mobile isn't as much lifting as it is today, and other controls that we can provide that can help quicker to market for custom portals, but not at the limit of what you could do on premises or even in other technologies. So this is a little bit more of a read by the nature of where we're at. We're still in the phase of planning. Outside of what we have today, which is being improved, we have some new thinking around how we can enable custom portals more in the future, and we lightly touched on them at Ignite, and I specifically called out a couple of sessions here, and actually the time that you can jump to if you want to hear how our engineering teams are thinking about custom going forward. And the last thing that I'm going to scroll to is just if you have access to Office 365 or are willing to go spin up a trial and try some of this out, you can try this today. And it's something that you can certainly try all aspects of Office 365 video, including the app that we have for iPhone, which I have linked here. Some of the new Delve experiences are also available. You just need to more turn on first release to be able to access them and see them. And then from an Infopedia perspective, if you try out boards and you try out the authoring canvas, you'll start to get a really good idea of what it means to contribute content into this environment. The only thing that's not quite there, certainly, is the main hub or the broader portal itself. And then, certainly, lastly, if you have feedback, we have a new Next-Gen Portals group in Yammer, and we've got a lot of user voice components that if you go and hit this particular page, this link, it'll actually take you to a number of different links that you can go and vote up features for Office 365 video, layer in comments about people experiences in Delve, or if you just have a question or want to have a dialogue with us or with the rest of the community, you can jump into that Yammer group. And it's small and growing, but I guarantee you that I'm active in there and that there's a lot of our engineering teams behind that as well. So that's the run-of-the-mill of what we talked about at Ignite, but really more than that, it's really what we're doing to build that overall portals portfolio, a lot of which is already in market, or certainly from a legacy perspective, people have been building on top of SharePoint and SharePoint Online. Again, in the cloud, we have a lot more telemetry that shows us what people are doing, where they're getting stuck, and we've been improving that in a significant way online. Like Michael said, a lot of that SharePoint 2016 innovation that's coming for beta at the end of the year and shipping early next will have a lot of the benefits that we've been building into the cloud. So benefits around page performance, file upload size, and certainly a lot of the admin and footprint perspective will make portals in the future a lot more accessible and easier to build, but also easier to manage going forward. So we think we have a good strategy. We'd love to hear from you today or going forward in a number of ways to connect with us, to tell if we're right, and if we're wrong, we love to know that, certainly before it's too late. But thank you for your time, and Mike, I'll hand it back to you. I'll certainly turn to questions if they came in through Q&A, or if you take any verbal, I'd be happy to stay on for a little bit. But I'll turn it to you, Michael, and follow your lead.
Thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate you being on the call today. I know this is an area of great interest to our partners, and so hopefully they saw a lot of value today. And I know Dawn Marie would like to take her survey and close out the call, and so we'll hang on and try to knock those down in the Q&A window. And if for some reason they don't get asked, please post them to the Office 365 Partner Yammer group. And so, Dawn Marie, you want to close out the call?
Perfect.
And take a survey?
Absolutely. Perfect. As you can see, I've gone ahead and opened up the I Am window, and I've popped in a link to what is, I Promise, a short survey. If you wouldn't mind, please take a moment before logging out, follow that link, and go ahead and answer those questions. 5 really quick questions. The survey scores are on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest possible score. On top of that, though, there is some room for you to leave some comments. So if you have some ideas on what you'd like to see in the future, maybe topics for this particular series, please let us know. I promise I will give all of that information to our sponsor and our presenters. So with that, this concludes the audio portion of our Infopedia web conference. Again, materials from today's presentation will be available on Infopedia. And partners, you are going to be able to view the recording on Microsoft's Worldwide Events all within approximately 24 hours. A huge thank you to our presenters, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today.